Um, Good morning and afternoon to everyone joining us today, and another welcome to everyone watching us on our YouTube channel at IYAI Plus. My name is Isaiah, and I'm the program manager for this year's IA Innovation Challenge. As we begin to reach the end of phase one of our program, Career Awareness, we're pleased to have you join us for today's roundtable on youth fairs. This goes without saying, but the purpose of this program and the spotlighting of our webinar speakers this past season has been for the reason to engage, inform, and empower the youth as they begin to put together their innovation challenge projects. It is crucial to recognize the pivotal role that youth play in shaping the future of public transportation. This also goes without saying, but this generation is not only the future workforce, innovators, and leaders in the infrastructure industry, but they're also the next cohort of transit riders. From the infants that my mom works with every day at the daycare to the naive high schoolers at the gym who seemingly have endless energy compared to me. These are the people that will define infrastructure for the upcoming decades. Ensuring that young people have access to affordable, reliable transit is essential, not just for their mobility today, but for their opportunities in education, employment, and community engagement moving forward. As a young adult myself, I'm honored to be the moderator for today. And today's roundtable is going to be led by three distinguished experts who will explore the nuances of fare structures and how their transit systems better serve young riders. We will also delve into the broader implications of youth engagement in transit systems and infrastructure development, emphasizing the importance of just equipping the next generation to both lead and contribute to the industry in the years to come. I would first like to introduce Mr. John Gardner. Um, John Gardner leads TriMet's efforts to ensure access to public transportation and compliance to federal laws through his oversight of TriMet's certified contracting, language access, and civil rights programs and policies. John's championed these efforts at TriMet since November 2015, most recently as the Executive Director of Inclusion, Diversity, Equity, and Access. During this tenure, he's helped to develop and launch TriMet's highly successful reduced fare and summer class programs. The reduced fare program has registered already more than 60,000 participants to date. He's grown relationships with community-based organizations across the service district's 3 counties and has worked to advance equity and inclusion internally. John has also led TriMet's outreach and coordination for their highly successful Reimagining Public Safety initiative. He's supported agency efforts to decriminalize fare enforcement and conduct an analysis of our enforcement practices to ensure no systemic bias. Before coming to TriMet, John actually served as the Director of Business Services for the Workforce Development Board of Multnomah and Washington County. While there, he helped the agency achieve recognition as the #1 workforce board in the country through a series of highly successful initiatives, projects, and programs developed and supported a resource development system that helped secure over $100 million in employment, education, and training grants for the region. Thank you so much, John, for joining us. We really appreciate you coming in for today. I would next like to introduce Mr. Carl Green Jr. Carl Green Jr. has served as the Civil Rights Director of the Denver Metro Area's Regional Transportation District since June of 2022. Green leads the Civil Rights Division comprised of 4 offices: Americans with Disabilities Act Office, the Small Business Opportunity Office, the Equal Employment Opportunity Office, and Transit Equity Office. He was worked at RTD's Transit Equity Manager from February 2021 to 2022. And actually, interestingly enough, Green actually joined RTD from TriMet, where he served as a senior administrator for Civil Rights Title VI and equity programs since July of 2017. He first began his public transportation career in January of 2015 as an operations analyst for TriMet's maintenance division in bus, rail, and facilities. Green retired as the Colorado Air National Guard's Equal Opportunity Superintendent in June 2024. His collective military service spans more than 20 years, and throughout this tenure, Green has served proudly in numerous capacities to include First Sergeant, Equal Opportunity Program Manager, and Special Emphasis Program Manager for people with disabilities and Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders. He holds a Master of Public Administration from the University of Oregon, 2 Bachelor of Science degrees in Organizational Psychology and Communications from Southern Oregon University, and 3 Associate of Applied Science degrees in Human Resources, Human Services, and Information Management from the Community College of the Air Force. He's a proud alumna of civic leadership programs, such as the Eno Center for Transportation's Mid-Manager Program, as well as Mineta Transportation Institute Leadership Academy. Thank you so much, Carl, for joining us. And last but certainly not least, we have Mr. Casey Courtwright, who serves as the Director of the Office of Management and Budget for Sacramento Regional Transit District, also known as SAC-RT, as you guys know. He joined the SAC-RT finance team in 2009 with the focus on fair revenue collections. In 2016, he served as the project and business lead for SAC-RT and 8 neighboring transit agencies, launching the region's first electronic fare collection system, Connect Card. In 2019, this is one of the big highlights, Casey spearheaded SAC-RT's ridership improvement initiative, leading to the foundation of Ride Free RT, a first in the nation unrestricted fare-free student ridership program. Today, in addition to serving as the Director of Office and Management and Budget, Casey continues to oversee SAC-RT's fare policy, ridership initiatives, and other strategic planning efforts. Thank you so much, Casey, for joining us today. As you guys can see, we have a stacked lineup today. You know what I'm saying? Each speaker will be providing an in-depth overview of their transit system's fare structures, as well as offer their personal perspectives on why this issue is of critical importance to them and to the future of public transit. Because it's anyone can go over the programs and outreach and what impact you guys are making in their communities. But these 3 speakers are in very unique positions where they've been able to achieve a scope of their community outreach, and they're able to give a much more in-depth explanation behind the why of this work. Like, why are they doing this work? What is their trade-offs? What is their motivation? What is the driving factor that keeps their organizations moving? And that's why we're very honored to have these 3 speakers. We look forward to a thoughtful and impactful webinar, and we thank everyone for joining in. And of course, once again, we do thank John, Casey, and Carl for being a part of this important dialogue on investing in the next generation of transit riders and infrastructure leaders. John, I will pass it over to you first, as you have elected to present first. So by all means, the floor is yours. Thank you so much, Mr. John Gardner.
Thank you, Isaiah, and thank you for everyone joining us today, especially Casey and Carl Green Jr. I want to give Carl Green Jr. a shout out because about 1/3 of my accomplishments that Isaiah mentioned were probably due to his hard work. So thank you, Carl. Miss you, bro. Anyway, before I jump into my 19 slides about our youth system, I just want to start with maybe my own personal why. Long before I was TriMet's Chief Equity Officer, I was a transit-dependent youth. Using the bus and the public transit system to get both to school and to my first job, to help graduate high school, to actually help me start in community college. It's been a through line to my success for the last, 50 years, basically. And so being able to work in transit now, which I believe after education is the #1 equalizer and connector to equality and a better life. And for those young folks who want to use Google, check me on that. I think it's an amazing utility, and it provides so much connectivity to both people's opportunities and future that I'm blessed to be working in the industry. So next, I'm going to jump to my presentation and just kind of walk you through what we're doing to make public transit even more accessible to our region's young people and our community. So, all right, can folks see these slides here?
Yeah, it looks perfect. Thank you so much.
Excellent. So again, this morning, I'm going to talk a little bit about TriMet's youth fairs, our history, and our existing programs, and kind of where we want to go next. So you're going to hear a little bit about TriMet at a glance, because I think scale matters when we talk about programs and services. We're going to walk through our youth fairs and talk a little bit about our student pass program, our high school program, our summer pass program, and just how we provide fair relief grants. And then sort of what we're trying to do looking ahead, some of which is informed by the next presentations you'll hear after myself. So as I said, scale matters. So TriMet serves approximately 3 counties in Northwest Oregon. Our service area includes about 1.9 million people, and we cover about 500 square miles. We provide that public transit service through a series of bus, MAX, commuter rail, trains, and paratransit service. So we have about 78 bus lines that roll out every morning at 4 a.m. We have 18 frequent service lines. We have 5 MAX lines with about 65 MAX trains, light rail vehicles. We operate a West commuter rail system, about 14 miles of track. And as I said earlier, about 700 buses leave our garages spread across the 3 counties every morning. We have almost 150 MAX rail vehicles, and about 60 are in motion at any one time. We have 50 park and ride facilities, and we operate multiple dozens of paratransit vehicles. And this is important just to have a sense of trying to provide these services to the region every morning across, as I said, about 2 million folks. So when it comes to fares, we essentially have 3 different fare types. We have an adult fare that's about $2.80 a day. We have an honored citizen fare that's half that. And then we have the same thing for our youth fare. So when we talk about our fare programs, that's sort of the baseline fare. We'll talk a little bit about the adult fare. If you double it, it's the cost of the day pass, and then different fare products for monthly and annual fares. But for a long time now, we've sort of segregated fares across these different communities. We actually just recently increased fares about 2 years ago. It was the first time we increased fares in 10 years. And as you can imagine, it wasn't very popular, but luckily, I think through some of our offsets and our community investments, we're in a better place. Oh, before I go forward, I wanted to sort of mention the little bus art you'll see in most of my slides today. We have a really robust community arts program. So if you see a design on a bus, that bus is actually out in our community operating every day. And it's really focused on historical celebrations, multicultural celebrations, and just honoring the different communities across our industry and our region. Okay. So our youth standard fare today, we operate, like I said, it's $1.40 for 2.5 hours. The day fare, all day fare is $2.80, and youth can actually buy a month pass for $28 per month. We have e-fare products. We don't do paper tickets anymore. You can use your cell phone or basically a card to tap on our system and actually travel the system. If you're under 7 with a parent, you are free on our system. So our student pass is a partnership with regional high schools. It was developed in 2013, and we've tried to make this available to any school district in our service area. This provides a free pass for students attending either public or alternative high schools, and it's at no cost to students. We've done this with partnerships with, right now, Portland Public Schools and Reynolds High School out in East Portland, Multnomah County. The model is TriMet pays 1/3 of the cost, and the city or the jurisdiction where that school is operating comes up with the other 2/3. For Portland Public Schools, this is about a $3 million project or program. We actually just embed the chips into students' ASB or student ID cards, and they use their student ID card and tap on our system and use it throughout the 10-month school year. And it's actually, it's very well. It allows us to put school logos on cards, and kids can sort of just use that. And it's, like I said, it's been available for over 10 years. So it is, like I said, concentrated for Portland Public Schools, which is the largest school district in our region. We have about 14,000 students participating. So not all the students across the, I want to say there's maybe 12 high schools as part of that district actually use it. But the 14,000 that do use it provide and they basically achieve about 1.4 million rides a year. So the next thing, years ago, when I came to TriMet, we were able to get some state funding through legislation, and it provided us the ability to put almost an additional $1 million into some of the schools who don't have the ability to pay for the 1/3, 2/3 model through a series of school-based grants. And so right now, with the other 17 school districts, we're able to sort of provide free fare grants in the form of tickets and passes across the parts of the other 2 counties we serve. So any of our school districts can actually participate. We have 17 school districts, 13 are currently participating. They order the fares, we send them out there, and they get whatever fare product they want. So if you're participating in an after-school program, or you're coming early, you can get tickets or fares built on our tappable cards, or day passes, and in some cases, even monthly passes.
Mm-hmm.
So right now we have 13 different school districts participating in this, 2 education service districts, and it's providing about 300,000 rides per year. We are trying to add to this for those school districts that want to go in and buy the 1/3, 2/3 model. And so we're hoping to sort of double this capacity in the next few years looking ahead. But it's been highly successful, especially for those districts that are farther out from our central service area that maybe don't have as much reliable transportation and are relying on their yellow school buses, which the closer you get into the downtown corridor, our system is fairly robust. So you're more likely to take public transit as opposed to those communities that are farther out. One of the things that Isaiah mentioned earlier was our summer pass program. And a few years ago, we were able to take some savings that were coming out of other programs and reprogram that for a free summer pass program. And so this started in 2022. Again, it was from some legislative tax that we had. For the first time in Oregon's history, in 2018, we started putting state money into public transit. Historically, it's been local or federal dollars. So this really expanded our ability to help folks. And we recognize that it's not just high school students that need access to sort of free transit in the summer. It's a lot of those 7th and 8th graders, especially 8th graders who are getting ready to transition to high school, so they can sort of travel and traverse their communities and be connected to not just summer school, but to their friends, their family, and all those green spaces. So it's been very successful. And so our first year we made 30,000 fares available, or 30,000 summer passes, and it's only grown since then. The program operates essentially from June 1st through August 31st, which is, a little bit of the end of the school year. We try to make those passes available in May. Now we've done the math, and there's about 80,000 students that could potentially use the passes. We are limited by the resources available, so it's a first come, first serve. In the past, we focused on free and reduced lunch students, but not all those students necessarily wanted the pass. So we really are just trying to get them in the hands of students that will use them. And we're partnering with schools and community-based organizations across our 3 counties that have either programs for youth or have the ability to connect with them. And so, like I said earlier, it's going on its 3rd year, and it's going very well. And in addition to high school students, it's also available to incoming 8th graders. In the past, at a certain point in the summer, we release them to anyone who wants them. So you'll see more 7th and 6th graders getting them. We're averaging around 30,000 passes, and we're getting 400,000 rides. One thing we're noticing, and not every student taps our system, so we think we're undercounting by quite a lot. So we're trying to add a rider education as part of this program. So in addition to our summer pass program, we actually have a series of robust fare relief grants. And these are sort of grants that we provide to community-based organizations that are, providing services to any sort of low-income, marginalized, or underrepresented community in our region. And this has been going for a long time. When I started at TriMet, it was about $1 million of annual grants to communities that served primarily lower income populations, but also just culturally different communities across our region. So these community-based organizations can use their grant resources to buy fares for youth, adults, honored citizens, seniors, veterans. When we look at it, they're buying about maybe just under $200,000 of youth fares, but we have so many youth that are between youth and adult, that 18 age range. We think that's kind of undercounting a little bit, because we see a lot of sort of younger or older youth, and the feds are now saying youth is 16 to 24 that are taking advantage of it. But it's pretty exciting to see how it's grown since Carl and I joined the agency back in 2015, sort of to its current size of about $3.5 million every year going to over 150 organizations, right? So we're really excited about sort of how this has been rolled out, what it actually is accomplishing, and just where we can go from this. What's exciting is, just like all of you on the call today, I'm really interested and excited to hear about what is happening at these other properties from Mr. Carl Green Jr. and Casey Courtwright, because we're just beginning our process. As you've heard, we although we do provide free fares through grants and a free summer pass, we don't have a free youth system. So this conversation is actually helping us really consider, sort of what's next, right? And so we have launched in the last year a pretty robust research project with 49s to sort of investigate what's happening around the country in like communities that have roughly similar sized populations and similar sized demographics, because we want to sort of recreate or replicate some of these better practices you're going to hear next. We do believe we'll be expanding the summer pass program to around 35,000 passes this summer. And as I said, hopefully the feasibility study that we're getting from 49s will help us understand how other communities have afforded to go even bigger than what TriMet is able to do now. But what's also happening, and this might be for another conversation, but what we're really seeing a value is building out our youth pipeline for future workers, right? And so we've done some things recently, like expanded access to CDL. So now in Oregon, if you're 18, you can get a CDL. And almost every operations job within TriMet, from bus operator to mechanic, does require CDL. And we've received some grants. So we have some partnerships with regional high schools to get young people into apprenticeship training programs for battery electric buses, as many properties were moving to battery electric and hydrogen buses. And we're realizing we can work with 18-year-olds right now and put them into sort of the traditional diesel mechanic programs that then transition them to battery electric. So we're not waiting for you all to be ready for us. We're starting to connect with the high schools even now. And we have a pretty robust summer internship program where we're actually hiring young folks on the spot after they finish their internship, because like myself, I didn't realize how many amazing career paths exist within public transit until I worked with it. All right. Yeah. So we have over 100 IT professionals. We have a legal team. We have a marketing team. So there's so many different career paths that just putting out these fairs and these programs to different schools and community-based organizations, we're getting that foothold and being able to tell the story much bigger and broader than the fact that every day or every week we're providing over 1 million rides, right? And so I think what's next for us is really to connect to more community-based organizations and build the key advocacy it's going to take for us to sort of grow our programs. And ultimately, my hope before I leave is move to a free youth system. So that's a lot of me talking very fast. And I don't know, Isaiah, if we were going to pause at the end of the presentations for questions, or we would do this collectively after all 3 presentations.
Yeah, we'll save the main questions for like at the end. But yeah, like thank you so much for your presentation on that one, John. Like, just watching it, just going through that presentation, I thought it was really cool how you guys were very mindful about, like, you guys have like different layers, like different levels of programs for various age groups of youth. You know what I mean? I feel like that's very, very mindful of like situations, because, like, not all youth just fit under the bill of like a youth. You know what I mean? There's like high schoolers and there's middle schoolers and there's different people in like different kind of situations. So I thought it was really cool that you guys have like the versatility as far as youth programs go. Before we do shift it over to Carl, though, just because I know we're on the topic of youth fair programs, I do have like 2 quick questions for you. Having seen the versatility of these youth programs work throughout your time at TriMet, like I said at the beginning of this webinar, we're really trying to figure out the why for all of you guys. So I guess my question for you is, like, having been surrounded by these programs and having seen youth directly affected by this, why do you work in transit? Why do you like continue to be here? Like, why is it important for the youth? And also, I guess my secondary question is, I remember you talking about the next steps, like what's ahead for TriMet as far as your guys' youth fair program. So I guess my other question is, what gives you guys hope for not only transit making a comeback in general, but also continuing to grow in the future? So you could answer whichever question, whatever order you want, but those are like my 2 questions that I want you to be able to take away from this.
Yeah, no, thank you, Isaiah. And all I would just say is, and I mentioned this at the beginning, the why, I'd say one of the things I didn't really do a good job of is giving credit to the community-based organizations. So all of those different program models, they didn't just come from folks like myself or Carl or other TriMet staff. That's informed, we did have at one point a youth council that really helped us understand the barriers that youth were facing. So part of the why is just having so many folks that are really needing to have better transit options, especially these organizations that work with the different culturally specific communities and all the communities of need, and really seeing the daily need, but their willingness to sort of bring their full expertise and understanding of those communities so we can serve them better. So just reinforcing the need is a big piece of that. In terms of my hope, I mean, I think public transit's down across the country and it's making a comeback in some communities faster than others, is geometry of roads isn't changing, right? So there is only so much space on our streets and our freeways and our highways. So how we use that space is incredibly important. How we make that space more green, how we make that space more inviting and welcoming to young people so they can use that time on public transit to study and prepare themselves for their next adventure. It's really encouraging to me to be in a position to be that conduit, that utility, that resource that kind of connects people to a better life. And so, but again, we desperately need the youth voice in helping us understand how we can continue to do that better so they use us as a first choice or certainly a second alternative on the days where they can use a little bit more of their free time to kind of advance themselves and let us do the driving for them. So
Yeah, yeah, that was very fire. Like I like the big takeaway that I took from you saying that is like, especially in that very end, where like youth should be able to see public transit as like a first choice and a second alternative as far as like their transportation methods, and that's essentially the goal for what we're moving towards and why these youth fair programs are essential. Thank you so much once again, Mr. John Gardner, for your super fire presentation on your guys' youth fair programs. I'm gonna pass the microphone over to someone else who is quite familiar with youth fair programs, Mr. Carl Green Jr. I know you're going to speak a little bit more about the Zero Fare for Youth pilot that dropped in 2023, and you guys are still moving towards it. I won't take any of your time, Carl. The floor is yours. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you so much, Isaiah. Glad to be here at the Executive Roundtable panel, along with John Gardner and Casey Courtwright. So again, thank you so much, Dr. Bev Scott and Isaiah and the rest of the team for putting this on. I like that question that you posed to John of why public transportation, and I feel that's very fitting before I get into my actual presentation to describe or explain my why. And two schools of thought that I think that comes to mind when I think about why public transportation or why do I continue to serve in this particular industry. One is I see the value proposition. I'm very mission or purpose driven, and I see the value proposition of what public transportation provides to communities. Being a product of a single mother, 4 children, being raised on limited incomes, I see it as an opportunity for upward mobility and economic prosperity.
Right.
Secondarily, I think about civil rights, right? I'm a student of civil rights, and I think about a nod as we just celebrated the 60th anniversary of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. What automatically comes to mind is the Montgomery bus boycott, right? We have the Freedom Riders. And although there were different circumstances during that time, during the 50s and the 60s, even before that, I still feel that civil rights is a particular civil rights issue where we have made huge strides in progress, but we have more to come. So when I think about the youth, right, the youth perspective or engaging with youth to take that baton of something that is part and parcel of our fabric of our communities, that's why I'm in public transportation. So with that being said, I'll go ahead and share my screen and continue. So again, thank you so much, Carl Green Jr., Director of Civil Rights Division, and I'll be speaking about the RTD Zero Fare for Youth program. So to give you an outline of what to expect, I'll go over an agency overview, similar to John, right? We need context to really level set on the scope and scale of our service area or RTD service area. I'll get into our pilot background. I'll get into outreach activities, which is really central to the Zero Fare for Youth program and how we shaped it. From there, I'll get into projected youth ridership, some data behind it. We'll do an evaluation of the pilot program. More or less, that was a tipping point to see if we're going to continue with the program. which gets into the other point of program continuation, as you see before you on the screen. And then I'll get into the funding that was received to continue the program, our implementation activities, as well as continued outreach. Agency overview. So the Regional Transportation District, it was created in 1969 by the Colorado General Assembly. Very unique in terms of public transportation. Well, not that unique, but in terms of board of directors, we are one of 4 or one of 3 entities that have elected board of directors. We have 15, so we have 15 districts. We are the only multimodal transit agency in Colorado. Our service area square miles is 2,345. We serve 8 counties and more than 40 municipalities, and we have a population of 3 million, about 3.08 million. So just for context, if you look at the Chicago Transit Authority, they're about 230 miles, and then they have the same population. So looking at the scale with my hands, where you have a smaller service area square miles of 230 with the same amount of population, RTDs is a little bit more expanded, right? So I just wanted to share that with you all. All right, as far as our primary modes, we have bus, paratransit, commuter rail, and light rail. We have about 85 local bus routes, 12 regional, and 5 airport routes. We also have 58 flex ride vehicles or cutaways, and we have about 9,720 bus stops. We also offer complimentary 88 complimentary paratransit services. We have about 344 accessible ride vehicles. And then in addition to that, we also provide a premium service called Access on Demand for our paratransit customers, which is provided by Uber, Lyft, and Metro Taxi. In addition to our bus and paratransit, we also have commuter rail, about 4 rail lines, and then we have 6 light rail lines. All right, now I'll be getting into the pilot background. So this really came about in April of 2022 when we kicked off a system-wide fare study and equity analysis. We previously done one in 2016 and 2019, but they were abbreviated in the sense it wasn't looking at everything under the sun with respect to our fare structure, our past programs. So when our general manager and CEO, Deborah A. Johnson, basically assembled a team, we had Bill Soroy as the project manager, and then myself as the deputy project manager, but more or less as other agencies were looking to increase fares, RTD moved in the direction of wanting to reduce their fares as we think about the great societal equalizer and ensuring that we're meeting the moment for our customers. So the time frame of this fare study was April 2022 to July 2023. And then we implemented this new fare structure the first quarter of 2024. So again, we decreased our fares and we expanded our various different programs, whether that is our LIV or income-based program, the introduction of our Zero Fare for Youth program pilot. And for context, the reason why we wanted to proceed, or why RTD proceeded with this program pilot, was in large part due to our general manager and CEO, where she wanted to focus on welcoming a future generation of customers and ensuring that transportation is not a barrier to whether that is getting to school, education, employment, or other community services. So in advance of our new fare structure being implemented, we actually started, if you rewind the clock about 3 months, we kicked off our program pilot in September 2023 through August of 2024. So it provided no-cost transit fares for youth ages 19 and younger. And just to give you a comparison of what the fare structure would have been like if we didn't move forward with the pilot, which was inherently funded by RTD. So as you can see on the screen here presented before you, the table on the left, any destination in the RTD's service area, no cost is for youth. And prior to this, we also had youth ages 6 and younger that can currently ride for free. And then we also wanted to be equitable in our approach, so we also applied our Zero Fare for Youth to our paratransit services if they are eligible to be certified within that particular program. Our fare structure with regards to our youth program prior to the Zero Fare for Youth pilot was, if you look at the screen here on the right, the table, there was about a 70% discount. So if we didn't have the Zero Fare for Youth structure, we already leaned into the moment with providing a subsidized fare structure for our youth, right? So if you look at 3 hour, it would have been 85 cents. A day was $1.70, and then the month pass was $27. So now I'll be getting into the community outreach activities. So our efforts took place between June 3rd, 2023 and June 29th, 2024. So we conducted a lot of outreach and did in-person meetings, both in English and Spanish, and we formed partnerships with youth serving organizations, rec centers, libraries, and in addition to that, we coordinated with school districts. And then we participated in over 80 plus community events, and we also had RTD pop-up events. So what has been part and parcel of the Zero Fare for Youth program, where we wanted to ensure, right, within our agency, we have collective intelligence, right, very smart people that are building out various different policies and program structures, but we really wanted to hear from community to get a better understanding of potential through lines or throughputs in order to improve our overall fare structure with a laser focus on youth. So in addition to our outreach activities, we move forward with a comprehensive marketing and outreach strategy, and some of the outreach feedback themes that we heard from, whether that be youth, family members, and the like, or school districts, it was an opportunity to support access to their particular destinations or key activity centers. There's an inherent benefit for families, especially if you have families of 4 to 6 plus, right? Being able to afford fares for their families when they're racking and stacking each month, and if you're on limited incomes, where's your money going to go, right? You have education, you have groceries, you have rent. So this was a positive direction for RTD to move forward with this pilot because of the feedback that we received, right? And it also provides youth with a level of independence, right? And being able to save money on gas by obviously not being able to use a car or not having access to a vehicle. So this program, was a value proposition to ensure that we are meeting the moment for our youth and families. So now I'll get into some projected youth ridership, just a little data. So when when we're analyzing the projected youth ridership, we looked at rather prior to the Zero Fare for Youth pilot in August of 2023, and rewinding the clock back to 2020, and then projecting it out of when we implemented it in 2024 to 2028, you can see the substantial increase year over year. And based off of the average between 2025 to 2028, we saw a projected 36% average monthly youth boardings increase. So again, based off of the calculus and deliberation of what this would mean for our ridership with the youth, this is what our estimated youth boardings were year over year. So now I'll get into the pilot program evaluation. As you think about, it's definitely a step in the right direction if you think about a program, right? What's the benefits? What types of data do you need to collect to see if you're moving in the right direction? And is it moving the needle to show that value proposition, especially as we're looking for funding, whether that be through state legislator, or if we are looking for particular grants, or if we're looking to garner support from various school districts to buy into the program. So we conducted a program evaluation. So the youth ridership routes, one data point that we looked at in consultation with one of our consultants, is looking at youth ridership routes specifically focused on services that have high youth ridership. So as you see on the screen here before you, you see the map of the 28 services that have a high count of youth ridership. And one thing that I will note, in addition to this analysis that we did, is we also did an overlay of demographics specifically for whether that be low income or Black, Indigenous, people of color. And we saw an inherent overlap within those particular two comparators, in addition to these high youth ridership routes. So that's just a long way of saying is these high youth ridership routes also have a high concentration or youth ridership that are Black, Indigenous, people of color, or BIPOC, or low-income populations. So I just wanted to share that there. In addition to that, we also carried out a mechanism or a tracking tool rather to see our ridership in our service area. So the time period between September 2003 to August 31st of 2024, we more or less utilized two different data sources. We installed into the fare box a bus operator count. So each of our bus operators manually clocked in how many youth boarded for that particular day or that particular stop to get a rough idea, a rough estimate of how much youth are riding our system for a particular route. What I will say is this was a little bit difficult for our rail services because there's not a bus operator or someone that can manually track those youth or discern whether there are youth or not. But we also leverage automatic passenger counters on our fixed route boardings. So our overall findings, which is depicted by this graph here on the screen, we can see that when we first started, we had about 110, 120,000 that was clocked in through our bus operator counts. And over this period of time, over this year within this pilot, there was a 56% increase in youth ridership over these 11 or 12 months. And nearly 163,000 youths were observed in August, which was a gain of over 58,000 customers, which represents roughly 5% of our system-wide boardings. So now I'll get into the Zero Fare Youth Program continuation. So as we noted, we were discerning over this year or up until the year of how are we going to continue this program. And working with our government relations officer and other staff in the agency, we caught wind of a Senate Bill 24-032, methods to increase the use of transit, where the Colorado Energy Office put forth a couple of different applications. One was specifically for youth. The other one was Zero Air for Better Air associated with the ozone. Knowing that RTD could only move forward with one, we proceeded with the Zero Fare for Youth grant application. We were awarded that in August of 2024. The amount of monies that was available for 1 year was $5 million. Initially, it was slated for only a year, but having conversations with the Colorado Energy Office, we extended it to 17 months just to ensure that we were able to spend down the entire $5 million that we are awarded, which was also a benefit because we were allowed to basically have our program for an additional 17 months. So I will say that future funding is subject to future state appropriations. We are definitely leaning into that moment to ensure that we continue the program. As part of the implementation activities, we were able to hire our first or very own new youth engagement specialists, where they started on December of 2024. We continue with marketing and public awareness campaigns, specifically focused on language assistance and effective communications, connecting with either the Colorado School of the Deaf and the Blind and other schools that serve linguistically diverse folks. And as far as reporting goes, we are getting ready to launch a youth customer survey, and we are leveraging the support of a consultant between April and May 2025 to get a better understanding of the utilization and also the benefits of the Zero Fare for Youth program, because it's one requirement that has put forth by the Colorado Energy Office, but we also want to, if we need to make any tweaks along the way, we need the data to help ground truth that information. In addition to that, we'll be providing monthly progress reports and then an annual report as part of our conditions or requirements of the $5 million. Again, outreach and engagement, it's best to know from the community, from the youth, right, on where if we're going in the right direction or the value of the program. So working in partnership with the various different entities. We also participated in 62 community events, engaged with over 15,000 youth and families. We held 50 discussions with community partners. And as we don't necessarily see this as a one and done, it's about continuing, sustaining, and maintaining positive relationships. So we doubled down on strengthening our relationships with numerous schools, school districts, youth serving organizations, and libraries. And it's not, and I want to highlight youth serving organizations and also employment hubs, and that's one that I missed on adding to this, because when most folks think about Zero Fare for Youth programs, it's essentially focused on folks attending school, right? But we know, given different circumstances, there are youth that have to work jobs, right? Or they don't go to school so they because they're helping to provide for their family, right? Different circumstances. So we wanted to ensure that this was well-rounded in terms of being able to garner feedback and input from folks that may not be necessarily going to school because of different circumstances. So with that, rounding this off as far as my presentation at RTD, we make lives better through connections. There's a lot of inherent program benefits, right? Where we think about saving money, gaining independence, increasing flexibility, reducing traffic, especially as we think about Denver is very car centric and it's very heavily traffic or congested with traffic. So this is a means to an end to reduce that, as well as less pollution and clearer skies. So with that being said, I'll turn it back over to you, Isaiah.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that presentation, Carl. It was funny because like when I was talking about John's presentation, I thought it was really cool how they had like TriMet had a lot of different versatile programs for different age groups, and then boom, Denver RTD comes in with the simple everyone 19 and under is free. So that was something that captivated me. And that was more particularly towards the number 19. Like why is there like an explanation behind the 19 and younger age range for zero fare for the zero fare for youth program? Because I don't know, I because from my understanding, like 18 is when you become an adult. So 19, it could have just been like 20, you know what I mean? 20 is like a much cleaner number. So if you had any intel on as to why you guys decided that 19 was a number to stick with.
Yeah, that's a great question, Isaiah. So it was before my time, but when RTD proceeded with it was a more so a past program fare structure
Mhm.
assessment. And during that time, that's when the zero fare for you structure came into place, where it was that
Mm,
70% discount.
right.
And knowing around that same time, they also introduced our live or income-based program. So our income-based program, our live program is 20 to 64. And then we have folks that are over the age of 65, where they have so it's a 50% discount for live income based, and then 50% discount for folks 65 and older, as well as Medicare, people with disabilities. So that's how it came to happen, where we already had our fare structure in place where particular fare categories received a certain percent, and then splitting the difference of 19 and younger was the reason why we moved forward with that.
All right, yeah, but thank you. That does make a lot of sense. I also did have another question. Something that I liked in John's presentation when he was talking about TriMet's programs is how their youth fairs was integrated into their student ID, how they were able to use their student ID as like their bus pass, their transit pass. So I guess my question is, what forms of identification are the youth from 19 and under supposed to use to board the RTD services and take advantage of the Zero Fare for Youth program?
Yes, I appreciate that question. So one of the points of feedback that we received from community is, are there any potential barriers to access or to
Yep.
board services? And knowing what I mentioned earlier of potential barriers or circumstances that may preclude someone between 19 and younger not being in school. So they
Mm,
may not have access to a high school or middle school ID. So we wanted to move in a direction where it was reducing the barriers to entry. So they can either use a a driver's license, a government issue ID, a alien registration or permanent resident card. They can use a military dependent ID, or RTD also offers an RTD youth card where they can essentially provide their information to get issued a card. So we wanted to expand it beyond just the school ID and have multiple different avenues for youth to be able to go aboard our services. And then in addition to that, there was some education and awareness
right.
with respect to our bus operators, fare inspectors, or transit police, where we are not refusing any service if they do not have a form of ID on their
Mhm.
persons. So again, the opportunity here is just really to reduce barriers and provide the youth with the opportunity to use our services that is free from any issues.
Right. Yeah, I think it's really like you guys taking that extra step just to ensure that like youth, particularly from those underserved communities are not only like aware of the benefits, but also being able to benefit from the FAIR initiative. So I thought that was really fire. I actually did have one more question before we did pass it over to Casey. Um, I remember in at the end of John's presentation, he was letting us know that like TriMet is in the phases of starting to launch larger programs, like a Zero Fare for Youth pilot in the TriMet area. From what I remember, I believe you said that um, you joined Denver RTD in June 2022, and the Zero Fare for Youth pilot dropped in 2023. So, having been there when the actual initiative started, were there any surprises in how the program was received or used by the community? I guess I was just curious about that because, like, if it was like immediately well received off launch and like people didn't know about it, that's like a good indicator to let like a TriMet or any kind of other transit agencies know that like, hey, once an initiative, a FAIR initiative like this launches, we have like actual proof and examples to share where the community was able to respond with it, engage with it in any manner. So I guess that was the question I had. Having been there when Zero Fare for Youth dropped, do you remember like what the climate was like when it dropped? How active it was, and just things of that nature.
Yeah, that's a great question. When I first got to RTD, I will say, if I'm comparing and contrasting, if you look at what it was before we implemented our new fare structure and then comparing to TriMet, where I would say, and there's probably folks at RTD that may have got tired of hearing me say this, but I'm like, oh, this is how TriMet does it. This is how TriMet does it, right? And it's really making it very simple and easy to use, right? So when we think about our fair study and equity analysis, it was based on our three goals was making it less complex or simple, making it more simplified, making it equitable. So the reason why I say this is there was our system, our fare structure was very complex, and a lot of folks did not understand, right, the various different fare categories, fare types that we had. So moving in the direction of wanting to make it more simplified and more equitable, this was something that was long awaiting, right? So
Right.
it wasn't necessarily a surprise. It was a step in the right direction. And what I mean by that is we wanted to create a system, look at everything underneath our hood. And as we think about not just year one to 2024 or 2025, we wanted to look 5 years, 10 years down the pike of what's going to bring more value to our writing public or our customers. And that is that one of which was introducing our Zero Fare for Youth pilot, where we knew that there is a lot of barriers, folks with limited incomes or for different circumstances, where we just wanted to ensure that we provided a value added benefit for our customers. And it wasn't necessarily a surprise because, as I noted before, we did a lot of community engagement, not just with Zero
Yep.
Fare for Youth, but I would
Mhm.
say our gold star efforts of our zero or of our system-wide fair study and equity analysis was the most, or by far the most, community engagement that RTD has done in its right since 1969, where we were working with community, standing with community. So there was no surprise because we heard all of that information and value-added feedback along the journey to introduce our new fare structure as well as our Zero Fare for Youth program.
Right. Yeah, that literally answered like every single question I had. So that was very fire. Yeah, thank you so much once again, Carl Green Jr., for going in depth into the Zero Fare for Youth program at Denver RTD. Totally unrelated, but I am a Denver Nuggets fan, so I am manifesting for the Nuggets to do well in the playoffs. I know you guys just fired Mike Malone. I didn't support it, but like, hey, they know something. They know something more that I don't. So thank you so much, Mr. Carl. And like while we're still on the topic, as we hand it over to Mr. Casey, tonight the Sacramento Kings play in the play-in tournament against the Dallas Mavericks. So, we're going to need a ball game from you guys. Also manifesting for you guys. I love the Mavericks, but, after what they did to Luka, I can't really support them anymore. I'm going to hand the floor over to Mr. Casey Cole right now at SAC RT, who will talk a bit more about the Ride Free RT program, which has been a national leader offering free fares for students for several years now. You guys won't hear any more from me. Casey, I hand the floor over to you.
Well, thank you, Isaiah. We will definitely take anything we can get here in the city of Sacramento for our poor Sacramento Kings team.
All right.
We have a long history of finishing behind my counterparts there in Portland and in Denver. So, but again, Casey Courtwright, the Director of Office Management and Budget here at SAC-RT, definitely, very happy and excited to be here today. Share some time with John and Carl in talking to you all here about our student ridership history at SAC-RT. We've had a long history, somewhat checkered past with student ridership, but I think we're headed in the right direction here the past few years, and excited to talk to you all about it. So, just very briefly, not as much of an intro to RT as what we've seen at Denver and Portland. A little bit about our riders, though. About 2/3 of our passengers, based on some recent surveys, don't own a personal vehicle, and about 40% of SAC-RT's customers actually ride for free through various programs. So, about most of those come from our Ride Free RT program that we'll focus on a little bit later on in the presentation. It's about 25% of our overall passengers are riding on that program, and about 15% of our passengers come from some other low-income assistance programs that we have here locally in the Sacramento region. We do operate both a fixed route bus and light rail service here in Sacramento, as well as ADA paratransit also. So diving into a little bit of the presentation itself, we'll go through some of the ridership history at SAC-RT for students and some of our other fare categories. We'll pause a little bit on the impact of fare subsidies on students. This was a really an eye-opening thing for me. I made a presentation to our board back in, I think it was in 2016. I've been at RT since 2009. It was in 2016 that we did a presentation to our board showing the impact of what subsidies were doing on students. Was very impactful, and ultimately that's what led to the launch of the Ride Free RT program a couple years later. So we'll go into Ride Free RT, the impacts that it's had on SAC-RT, and some of the future of the Ride Free RT program itself. So SAC-RT, like a lot of the transit agencies around the country in the 20-teens, we were experiencing declining ridership, declining revenues. We were really in a tough spot, financially at that point in time. Our ridership can be divided into 4 major fare categories. Like a lot of other transit agencies, we have full fare paying or basic fare paying passengers. We have students, persons with disabilities, and seniors are our 4 major fare categories at SAC-RT. The chart here on the right clearly shows that student ridership and full fare paying ridership had been harmed the most during that time, while seniors and those with disabilities, their ridership had actually remained pretty flat, despite declining ridership at SAC-RT in general and around the country in general. And again, important to highlight that at this point, by 2016, SAC-RT was in a pretty dire spot financially. We had depleted most, if not all, of our reserves at this point, and we're certainly not in a position to decrease fares or offer subsidies. We did a fare increase in 2016 to try to turn us around a little bit from a financial perspective. But there certainly wasn't money for fare-free programs or even further reduced fare programs at that point in time. By 2017, about a year later, we had seen a little bit of improvement. The fare increase that we did in 2016 had turned us around, at least headed in the right direction financially, but we were still quite conservative in terms of what we were looking to offer for fare incentives to rebuild ridership. So I was part of an internal team made up of some of our other executives and planning staff that was doing our ridership at the time, really focused on how can we rebuild ridership at SAC-RT? What can we do to turn around this trend of declining ridership that we'd seen for the past about decade or so? A few goals that we had: we needed to minimize financial risk. As I mentioned, we certainly were not in a position to take big leaps. We're looking to build partnerships, serve new markets, focusing on fare subsidies or employer incentive programs. As the capital city here in the state of California, we do have a lot of state employees who ride SAC-RT. They do receive employer benefits, and so we were looking into options with the state and their employees. And we also look to expanding our electronic fare options for better data collection and potentially to increase ridership through new opportunities or new ways to pay fares. In terms of student ridership itself, Here's a little bit more history on it. You can see the ridership peak back in 2004, 2005 timeframe at RT. We had declined almost 80% in terms of our total ridership from students. The fares were increasing drastically on students. We had a reduced fare program for students in the early 2000s that was as low as $7.50 per month. That cost had gone up to $50 per month over that time frame. This was to bring it more in line with our other discount fare programs. So seniors or those with disabilities were also paying $50 per month in and around that 2016 timeframe. So the fares were for students were just brought in line with what our other discount fare categories were receiving. And I mentioned in 2016 we did a big an internal study. One of those was a Title VI study that suggested that students were the lowest income fare category at SAC-RT, also the highest percentage minority fare category for SAC-RT was students. And they also received the lowest level of financial assistance. So this chart on the bottom left, I actually want to spend a little bit of time on. And what this really drove home for our board, and for myself personally, for some others at RT, was that while the fare, the dollar amount that students were paying, that $50 per month or the $1.25 single ride fare that was available to them, while it was the same as seniors or persons with disabilities, it was certainly less than the full fare paying passengers. The actual out-of-pocket costs that students were paying was higher. So our average fare being paid by a student was around $1 when you consider the discounts that some were receiving on the monthly pass. But about 90% of that cost was actually being paid for by the student or their family. Whereas there are a lot of social service type programs in the Sacramento area that are sponsoring fares for seniors. They may be sponsoring fares for persons with disabilities. I mentioned the state employee program that was paying a percentage of the fare for full fare paying passengers. So these other fare categories were receiving somewhere between 40 to 50% of the cost of the fare itself was not being paid by the passenger, and it was instead being paid by a third party of sorts. And that simply wasn't the case for students. So we came to the conclusion, the board made a decision that we wanted to do something for students. Initially, we reduced fares further for students again, but that really is what kicked off the discussion around Ride Free RT and how could we actually just sponsor free rides for students in general. So SAC-RT needed to come up with funding for the program. The initial goal was to effectively just replace the annual fare revenue that we were receiving from students. We got about $1.6 million in annual funding to offset the program. The city of Sacramento joined on as a flagship partner, providing $1 million in funding for the first few years of the program. So they made up about 2/3 of the funding. They make up about 2/3 of our ridership. That's the way that the initial program was kind of designed. And we launched the program in October of 2019. Now, funding is always a big question for Ride Free RT, even given the success of the program we'll talk about. We continue to fight for funding every year. It's renewed on an annual basis, and we're actually having conversations right now with local municipalities and school districts to make sure we secure funding for the next year of the program. We started working this year with a group called the Nehemiah Emerging Leaders Program, or NELP, to secure long-term support. NELP is it's an interesting team here in the Sacramento area. They are a young emerging leaders group that selects one major initiative across the Sacramento County region each year to do an in-depth study on. We were selected this year. They've been fantastic to work with. They've been out, talking to CBOs and others, and really doing a lot of the legwork that we did back when we launched the program in 2019, 2020, redoing that and refreshing that with a new perspective, and really garnering a lot of support for the program moving forward. So what is Ride Free RT itself? It's a fare-free transit program for students grades TK through 12, so that's TK through high school, and homeless youth that live or attend schools within SAC-RT's service boundary, which is essentially the Sacramento County line here in Northern California. When we launched the program, it was the first of its kind in the nation, providing completely unlimited access to all students within our service boundary. We partnered with local jurisdictions to provide funding to offset those fair revenue losses that we talked about on the prior slide. Like Carl mentioned, marketing was and community outreach was a huge thing that we took on here at RT. Certainly, by far, the largest marketing campaign that we've done internally, at least since I've been here since 2009. We were anywhere and everywhere that we possibly could be. We partnered with all of the local school districts here. We have 7 major school districts in the Sacramento region. We also have a number of other public charter schools, private schools that we partnered with as part of this program. We did large bus wraps so that half of our fleet effectively was promoting the program as they rolled around town. We did billboards throughout town. We were on the news. We hosted community pop-up events. But honestly, the most effective thing that we did, shown on the bottom left corner of the screen here, was just these simple banners that we produced, that we put, that we partnered with schools to put directly in the pickup and drop off line. So as you were sitting there waiting in your car for 20 minutes after school or whatever it may be, feels like forever to get our kids out of elementary or middle school these days. As you're sitting there in that line, you may pass 3 or 4 of these youth ride free posters on your way to pick up your kid. We heard more about this sign than we did about all of our other stuff combined, probably. In terms of when we asked passengers, well, how'd you hear about the program? Oh, I saw the sign in the pickup and drop off line and decided that, yeah, we could try putting our kid on the bus and see what happens. And so it was a major benefit for us to do, in your face, promotions directly to our customers. And it is a big benefit for us in the program and for the schools involved that they allowed us to do that. This is a now famous photo that we took to the board shortly after the first day of the Ride Free RT program. So we launched in October of 2019. So you can see this is pickup the first day at one of our high schools after school. This bus the day before had 12 students on it, and on day 1 had like 70 students on that particular bus. So it took off immediately where it took off. And the feedback was just fantastic. So we still have buses that are packed like this today. In fact, on many of our services, we now run shadow buses or second buses with our existing fixed route fleet when we know that we're going to have school pickup and drop off. Just because if we didn't, every one of the school buses would look like this, or school route buses would look like this. In terms of ridership for the program, a bit of our history here as well. You can see the declining ridership from around 2010 to 2018. The student ridership had been declining. We had about 1.5 to 1.7 million boardings or so per year at the time that Ride Free RT was implemented. We're now this year will eclipse 5 million student riders, it looks like. So, more than 3 times what we had just a few years ago. Obviously, there was a dip during COVID where schools were shut down and stuff like that. But as soon as schools had returned, you could see the ridership pick right back up, and the line continues to just grow and grow and grow. In terms of ridership as a percentage of our total ridership at SAC-RT, historically we'd always been in the 8 to 10% of total ridership is what students had always made up. They're now over 25% of our total passengers, and nearly 40% of our bus passengers are students here in the Sacramento region. I think one of the things that we can really attribute that to is that the Ride Free RT program doesn't just provide transit access to students to and from school. So this is getting them to and from work opportunities, leisure activities, anything and everything. Summer, there's no end to the Ride Free RT program, and we've seen a major benefit from that. In terms of where we're going, funding is key for this type of program. We do need to continue to find funding, so we've been partnering with local school districts. Sacramento City Unified School District, or SCUSD, is one of our larger partners. So we've been going to board meetings and stuff like that for some of the school districts. This is just one sample slide from a recent board meeting that we did, where we are able to show the school district the benefits that Ride Free RT is having directly to their students, display to them the number of estimated boardings per day, for their students that are being picked up and dropped off by the Ride Free RT program. In terms of just context here, Sacramento City Unified has around about 30,000 students in total. So about 10% of their student population is riding Ride Free RT to get to and from school. And almost half of their students are elementary students, and a lot of those students aren't necessarily participating in the program. There's not a lot of kindergarten and first graders, for example, getting on our buses by themselves. So really, we think about 20% of the middle school and high school students are actually riding Ride Free RT to and from school every day. In addition, for SCUSD, we do have a specialized service for SCUSD schools. Now, as a public transit agency, we can't run a charter bus service or school bus service purposefully and solely designed for the school, but we do ensure that the 200 series routes that we're hitting all the school sites themselves. We're timing the service so that it's convenient for students for pickup and drop off time. And we're also running those trips a little bit later to partner with the schools to time for things like when they have major sporting events, or when are they letting out things like football practice and all that type of stuff, ensuring that we have those times of day covered for the school as well. So these kids are also able to participate in extracurricular activities at the school and not feel as though they may be left behind or searching for a ride home at the end of the day. And so with that, I will turn it back over to you, Isaiah, and would love to answer any questions you may have or the group may have. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much, Casey. We really appreciate that was a great presentation. I learned a lot about SAC RT and like all the stuff that you guys have going on. We are going to open up the Q&A section now. Usually the protocol is you guys drop your questions in the chat, or if you guys want your questions to be anonymous, you can DM it to me on the side in Zoom. But while we do wait for that, any of those questions to come in, I actually did have a question for you, Casey. One of my favorite screenshots in that slide was seeing that first day of the program dropping and that bus just being full. I think it goes without saying that I think it's safe to assume that as ridership increased, school attendance probably did increase as well. I don't know if your agency would have any of that data to be able to see that measurable impact, since implementing youth fair programs of like school attendance increasing alongside that ridership. But I guess part of my question, I bring that point up is to say, especially like with that flyer that was showing up on the fences, and you said that was the most popular form of marketing for the program. What are some creative or different ways you've seen young people engage with your guys' agency beyond just ridership being on the bus? Like whether that could be the increased rate in SAC RT internships, any kind of youth being interested in joining any advisory councils or any sort of outreach efforts. Because I bring that question up because, generally in my experience, when in my area, we used to have PACE free buses. And because of that, when a lot of times when I used to do the free bus program, I would look at the advertisements that are inside the bus, and that would generally get me interested in any kind of potential internship or employment opportunities. So having the program for a couple of years now, have you guys been able to see any sort of increase in any sort of internship or youth opportunities since the program's launched?
Yeah, so we do partner with a program called City Year here in the Sacramento region that launched around the same time. It's designed for like high school juniors, seniors, and freshmen in college and stuff like that, even where we provide them educational opportunities around public transit. We do provide some internships actually here at SAC RT. There's usually a couple a year that we're working with. We had a larger program that we were partnering with the city of Sacramento on, where we actually hired, it was 3 or 4 dozen interns just for a small, task around the district. Right when that was a partnership that launched right when Ride Free RT started in 2019. That kind of fizzled out with COVID shortly thereafter, unfortunately. But we have continued the City Year program moving forward. It was interesting. You were hinting about, Isaiah, the impact of student attendance that Ride Free RT has had. That's one of the things that we're trying to work with the school districts actively now. The program was initially funded by cities here and local municipalities originally. It's shifted a little bit in putting some of the financial assistance on the school districts themselves. And so one of the things that we're trying to point out to them is that there's clearly a even just a flat revenue benefit to the schools because they're receiving federal funding or some state funding based on student attendance itself. And so here in Sacramento, the numbers break down essentially if 1 out of 10 students attend school just one extra day per year, they're actually going to be the program pays for itself from the school district's perspective. And so in terms of how do you measure whether or not that's occurring, that's very difficult to find out.
Right.
It would take like a, hey, we're not going to do the Ride Free RT program for a year to find out if it's actually, the actual impact it's having. And we don't want to stop the momentum we've got, obviously.
Yeah.
But we are certainly interested in that type of data when it comes to partnering with the school districts on, what impact does it have on student performance, on student attendance. We do know from a lot of anecdotal notes that we receive, it has impacted extracurricular activities for students. We've got stories from students who, have always wanted to play on the football team, but never could because they didn't have a ride home from school if it wasn't the yellow school bus, right? So we have a lot of those type of stories as well that go beyond just student attendance or performance.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I'm just saying, you guys definitely got to get on that one because, like, I remember back when I was in high school. My school is pretty far away, and both my parents used to work in the mornings. So the majority of the time, I always had to walk to school. And like, I remember there were a bunch of times where it would be snowing too much, and my parents would say I wouldn't have to go. But I'm just saying, because I know there for a fact you guys have a lot of students in that range. Like, if there was like a ride free SAC RT program over here, I know my parents would have forced me to go to school. They would be like, hey, there's a bus right there. Like, there's no excuses. You gotta go. So that's fire. We do have a question from Kenneth Blacks in the chat. This goes for all of you guys. What sort of initiatives do you have in mind to ensure safety and inclusivity? And are you guys working closely with any schools and organizations to emphasize safety as more free fare programs are implemented?
So I could start. So we launched in 2020. We launched what we call a "See It, Hear It, Report It" campaign at SAC-RT, where we encourage passengers themselves they can anonymously submit tips or report any kinds of issues they come across. It could be a safety or security issue. It could also be a cleanliness type of issue. We have ramped up some of our security services on board our light rail vehicles. On the buses, we do certainly rely on the bus operator to report any instances they may come across on the buses. That was one of the concerns in launching, Ride Free RT that we did receive from the parents is how do we know that our students are going to be safe?
Yeah.
And so we did ramp up some of those security efforts and launch some additional security type programs to kind of come at that from a little bit of a different angle. So yeah.
Right. Carl or John, if you guys want to add anything?
Good, Carl.
Yeah, one thing I just wanted to highlight, similar to Casey, we have an app-based see something, say something through Transit Watch. So it provides another opportunity for our riding public, our customers, our youth to be able to report different types of incidents that they may come into contact with. And the one thing, and I was trying to find an email because it's a great question as far as the various safety and security initiatives that RTD is moving forward with. Traditionally speaking, we had a smaller footprint of transit police within our particular district, and we relied on allied security or contracted staff. But over the course of this past couple years, we are phasing out and increasing the number of police officers, whether that be sergeants, corporals, and so on and so forth. And the model that we're looking at, right, it's upwards to 300 plus transit police officers, where in order to respond to a particular incident, we have broken up our 2,345 square mile service area and broke it up into different sectors and having a commander of each sector in order to provide a faster response time. So there is and I was trying to find the stat that we just recently had, but the number of calls that's top of mind that we had with regards to different incidents is it's decreased if we go year over year from 2024 to current date, about 52%. So the presence that we have in our community, working in community with various different community-based organizations, or as we think about folks that are experiencing houselessness, or folks that may be utilizing various, I'll just say bad things, that we're able to address those types of issues in our system, right? To Casey's point, making it more, if we try to define the word cleanliness, there's a lot packed into it. So what does that really mean? So making sure that our system, right, one of our strategic priorities and strategic initiatives is creating a welcome transit environment, customer and community connections, community value, customer excellence. So that's really centered on our customers, right? Making sure that they have a system that's deserving of their patronage.
Right.
Yeah, and I would just say, very similar. We have a 24-hour security desk. We have increased transit police across our 17 municipal city government partnerships. We've actually doubled down, and we are spending, well, we have over 300 allied security contractors on the system now, more than we've ever had. But we also have a safety response team that is non-police, more social service focused, like finding people in distress. So, and customer service supervisors. So we are probably investing 4 times more resources this year than we did 5 years ago. And when we do the summer pass program, we do orientations about how to plan trips and how to use the system and how to sort of call on security if needed. So we feel really good about that. As just like every major metropolitan area, we still recover as a region in terms of public safety. So,
Mm-hmm.
And I would also offer up too, I think John's being a little modest. A couple of years back, they did a Reimagine Public Safety and Security project in partnership with various community-based organizations. And there was a laundry list of different initiatives that they've been able to implement, right? And even thinking about various transit properties on, if we're thinking about inclusivity, right? They're one of the first transit agencies that worked in concert with a professor at the Portland State University that looked at inclusive practices with respect to citations and so forth. And then they also have administration citation program, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot of great things coming out of TriMet with regards to safety and security.
Right. And Kenneth also mentioned in the chat on the note regarding data and data literacy, being able to capture that. Any ideas brewing in your organizations on how the industry can collect more data from our youth to improve systems and understand how youth navigate systems? I think John kind of spoke to this earlier with the use of chips in the student IDs when scanning. So I think that's a cool thing to be mindful of. We do only have a couple minutes left. I did want to get one question that was messaged to me, whispered in Zoom. Each of your guys' agencies has implemented reduced or free youth fare programs in different ways. Can you guys speak to the community partnerships that you guys were in collaboration with that helped make these free youth fare programs possible? And I think that's a great question because, from SAC-RT collaborating with the Nehemiah Emerging Leaders Program, John having that track record of connecting relationships with those community-based organizations, and RTD working with those access on demand organizations for paratransit, as well as I think you guys were in 62 community events. You guys are engaging in community outreach very deeply. So all 3 of you guys have a very deep understanding of the connection between making these programs work alongside community-based organization partnerships. I don't want to speak on behalf of any of you guys, but I think it's safe to say that none of these programs would be possible without the support of these community organizations. So could any of you guys speak to that as to why having that community connection is essential for letting any of you guys' programs take off?
I'll jump in first just to say, yeah, when we do our free fare grants, we recognize it doesn't completely cover the cost of a community-based social service agency providing access. And so, even having $3.5 million spread across 150 organizations, it's only around $30,000 an organization, but it's a beginning. And I do want to say, it's not free, it's subsidized. And I think it's a very hard for a public transit to sort of self-fund its service. So you do need advocates and allies and partners. And I think community-based organizations, grassroots organizations, advocacy groups are so crucial to help make the case
Yeah.
and you know what I mean, and make legislators or regional governments or even business understand the need and the value proposition. I love what I think Casey talked about. I hadn't thought about how we can make a case for resources by reducing truancy or you know the whole increasing attendance in schools. What a great, which is I'm sure there's hundreds of community-based youth serving organizations that would love to partner to make sure kids are getting to school on time. So just listening in on this call, like how we leverage what I'm hearing from my partners here about building those advocates, because it does take external champions to kind of maintain these resources to sort of grow access.
As I think about community and having sustained and authentic and trusted relationships, that's really about the community-based organizations, nonprofit organizations, direct service providers, folks that offer places of employment, right? So being able to not only just stand in community, but stand with community as it relates to various different programs, specifically focusing on Zero Fare for Youth, where a lot of our success or outcomes, right? There's different metrics that can be evaluated, such as ridership, but also to what Casey noted, right? That's something that we looked at too, was truancy rates, right? And getting a better understanding from having conversations with superintendents and school districts on how can we support each other in order to reduce truancy rates, increase or decrease absences, increase youth being able to go to school or get to point B, point C, i.e. places of employment, or being able to go to the Boys and Girls Club or various different entities. So I would say, in addition to those organizations, we also doubled down on ensuring that we're connecting with organizations that serve linguistically diverse customers or customers with disabilities. So specifically reaching out to those particular communities of how do we support and how do we engage to ensure that folks are able to utilize our system and how to ride our system, because that's a barrier in and itself. If you don't know how to understand different schedules or when bus is going to pick you up or what have you, by working in community, they can help bridge the gap on creating that holistic understanding of what we're ultimately trying to achieve, which is, right, when we think about folks being able to get to their destinations.
I think I may just add very briefly, it also helps to have a passionate board member um, who is a champion for youth. You know, our Ride Free RT program really gained traction. We had some individual meetings with our board members, and we gave them essentially you know, a list of options for ways to increase ridership at SAC-RT. And by far, the largest increase in ridership would have come from the Ride Free RT program. And he looked at us and he says, "Hey, you mean for $1.5 million, we could just do this for free for everyone?" And I said, "Well, yeah." And he says, "Okay, well, let's do that then." Right. And so from the very next board meeting on, he was up there saying, "Hey, we have this idea." He'd raise his hand and go, "Hey, let's talk about Ride Free RT. How can we just do that? Where can we come up with the funding? How can we just do it?" And so it really does help to have internal support as well. Getting the CBOs and others on board with something like this, that they'll certainly love it. But having a champion internally, high up in the executive level or on your board, was certainly key for us. Yeah.
Thank you. And I know I did get a couple more questions in DMs, but we are closing out our time frame for this webinar. We generally do like to end off on a sentimental note when it comes to the final takeaways for you guys speakers. So all three of you guys will get a chance to answer this one. When it comes to these kind of youth fair programs and anything as far as infrastructure spotlights, our goals are to ensure that like these youth fair programs are not just a benefit, but they're actually a launch pad for building long-term ridership, equity, and trust in public transit. At the end of the day, our goal here at AYA is essentially to make transportation attractive for youth, to get people interested and engaged in these kind of careers. So I do ask this for all three of you guys. Having been in the game, having had skin in the game for a while, if you could offer one piece of advice to a young person hoping to join the future of transit, what would it be and what would that necessarily look like? And I think you guys would be able to speak on this, having dealt personally with young students, young people joining ridership and being a part of your guys' program. So I will ask once again, if you could offer one piece of advice to any young people watching this, hoping to change the future of transit, what would that be? So whoever feels inclined to speak on that first.
Well, I can start. So I think if you're looking to get into transit in terms of just being a passenger and a rider, it's you just got to take the first step, and you got to give it a few. Like anything else, if you're trying to build a new habit or take something on that's changing your life potentially, don't let your first experience be your last experience. I guess give it a while, give it a try for a little while, and start to make riding public transit a habit for yourself. In terms of if you're looking to get in the industry as like an employee or potentially supporting the industry that way, it's start off as an intern somewhere. Just get your foot in the door in public transit. I think you'll find that once you get inside an agency somewhere, there's opportunities for growth like crazy, and you can move all around. John mentioned earlier, we're not small companies or organizations. There are 1,500 employees at SACRT, and we're a relatively small public transit agency. So your chances of moving around in and around a district are certainly great, and you can certainly make a career out of it and find a true passion in life for sure.
Cool.
I will say, just to piggyback, closing thoughts is, right, as we think about our future generations, next generations, it starts with you. And there's a call to action, and whether it's a civic duty or something to that extent, whether it's public transportation or any issues that can impact you or in the future, is step up to the cause. It's much like as I was thinking about going to the gym, right? You want to work on that particular muscle. Civic participation is the same way, and to get involved in your local community and just being empowered to know that you have a voice in this. And as we think about collectively moving forward in the direction that's going to benefit our communities, is step up to the plate, and the call is yours.
Yeah, I'll just echo what folks said. I mean, it starts by getting involved, and that involvement can literally be just ride the system, learn your system, learn what you like about it, and what things you think, hey, maybe this could be improved. I mean, it's yes, your voice matters, but it matters more the more you know and the more you use it. And I lean into strength based. It's easy to criticize, but come with solutions or ideas. Some of the best ideas we have came from our youth council, 15 and 16-year-olds, really good, sharp folks that cared and wanted to see sort of things grow. And the other thing I would say is don't discount public transit. Whatever your skills are or your interests, are you an artist? Do you like working with computers? Do you like working with your hands? All of those skills translate to careers and career pathways that exist in public transit. I did not know when I was in high school all of the potential opportunities, and by no means was this job or degree I went to college for, but here we are, hopefully doing impressive, creative things in partnership with the community. So, give it a chance, but also just lean in, look for internships, like Casey said, ride the system. I mean, whatever works for you would work for other youth and making it better. So share that with your local transit agency.
Right. Yeah. I think that says it all right there, especially in that very ending part. All skills are needed in the transportation game. You know what I mean? Like, I have an English degree, and I never thought I could be in anything regarding infrastructure. Cause I thought it was always a bunch of math and scientists, and like I failed science, so I thought it wasn't my game. But thank you so much, truly, John Gardner, Carl Green Jr., and Casey Corrett, for your insightful and powerful presentations. You guys are making deep impacts within your community. It's very, very meaningful work. We will see all of you guys on May 22nd for our national webinar for Bus of the Future and transit worker safety. But truly, once again, thank you so much, all three of you guys. We hope you all have a great Wednesday, and we hope to see you all soon. Thank you so much, and take care, everyone.
Thanks, folks. Good to see you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Awesome. Take care.